Do I want to anyway? Oh no, I probably could. I probably find it interesting, but totally off topic. Going on to that. What do I want to mention? That a few of the things that I explore in the podcast and beyond in here will be the both the counters to this. So there's like the main core of municipalism, communalism, dual power strategy. But then there's also kind of the fact that I kind of waffle, not waffle, I don't know. I expand to include both the autonomous, the anarchist type, the chop kind of projects and their limitations, and the challenge to communalism, which is you kind of need a state to kind of, because otherwise like you could build dual power, but at the end of the day you're maybe just building islands of post-capitalism in a capitalist world, similar to the socialism in one state, or the socialist states that exist today. They're not really able to build socialist power elsewhere, or they can, but very slowly, and they have to be very, very careful. And they have to do so against immense opposition. We have a viewer. Welcome. I don't know if that's you, Mike, or someone else. But welcome, all the same. Or maybe you're just a troll who's randomly watching. I don't care. But I'd love to meet you. So for me on that, there is so yeah, so there's like, even though I'm in the Green Party and there's like electoralism there, there's actually a conversation we're having right now in the New York State Green Party. We just lost our ballot line. We blame Como. We're not exactly base building. We would like to. We talk about it. But it's always kind of one of those like kind of are us white socialists just all talk? We talk strategy and the ways we do things, but at the end of the day, what we've accomplished is we run local campaigns. We may win a few. Green Party has won 1,000 over its lifetime, more than many other leftist parties. So it's a kind of what do I want to mean? What do I mean? Insulting when critics say like, "Oh, we don't want to." Well, it'll actually show up with the MMP. That's actually well, maybe I should just get into that. So here's an article called "The Hollow Hypocritical People's Party." Um, I've kind of covered the MMP in the podcast a little bit, especially during the year, electoral strategies, and it's really frustrating to see these new formations that kind of say they're going to do everything that the Green Party has not done, and say they're going to do it better by just being slightly different. They're not going to be different in structure. In fact, they're going to even have less structure. So, who wrote this? Elanine Akreno's son. It was literally filed today, and it showed up in my Facebook feed. So I'm like, this is perfect material to start streaming with. So let me start by disclosing I once thought the Movement for a People's Party, now calling itself just the People's Party, was a viable alternative to the duopoly. However, I've been monitoring their movements as an organization, as well as using their internal Slack as a volunteer to try to keep updated on what they're doing. I, for one, don't use Slack. Every time I mention using Slack in an organization I'm in, I usually get that's not really how social relations work. I think even like saying a community organization, you have coordinators, the core people, and then you have a lot of volunteers or people who are involved. And they cluster into affinity groups or committees or just group of people doing stuff based on locality or interest. And then you have coordinators who then act as spokes on the wheel. Even in anarchist horizontalism, this is how things work. This is how things worked in Occupy. You had affinity group working groups, and you had a spokes council that coordinated their efforts. And this is one of those justifiable hierarchies. Now they've gotten their credentials that they're just kind of interested. They're really interested in the People's Party. But let's take a deep look at the MPP and why it isn't what it seems. Now, I could tell you from the outset it isn't what it seems, but this is a good summary of all of the things that make it sketchy and sus. or whatever you want to call it. But otherwise, just like, well, this is not going to work out of the gate. In fact, it may even be worse than not going to work or bad strategy. It could be the equivalent of a multi-level marketing political scheme, which I was actually um, one of the bad experiences I had before Occupy. It was one of those things right before Occupy. Was the It was a kind of People's Party thing of like draft the president, and it was a total scam by designed by moderate Republicans to keep a challenger from Republican challenger from Romney. That if you run someone too right wing, we'll run a moderate Republican on our own ballot line. And so they nominated Mitt Romney, quite the moderate Republican, not right wing enough for a lot of the right wingers at the time. Which is why there wasn't as much Republican or right wing mobilization for him as there was for Trump. But here's just a short list of this advisory council. Now, in nonprofits, advisory councils don't have voting power, they don't have political power. They're just kind of there to um, both spread and promote the message. Like our radio station has an advisory council, and it really is just people that kind of have on a list to give us clout, as well as when we do something, they propagate what we're doing. So they're really there as like spellcaster buffers to amplify what a group or organization is doing. So Amani Wadishi, founder of the Beyond Bernie, former volunteer for the National High School Director for Bernie 2020. So she must be much younger. Chase Iron Eyes, co-founder of the Last Real Indians. Chen Sim Lin, board member of Healthcare for All LA. Very nice. Chris Smalls, haven't heard his name yet. He's a founder of the Congress of Essential Workers. This is an organization I actually didn't know existed. Maybe I should think about joining it. Um, but he made headlines by leading a Amazon warehouse walkout. So he's kind of a figurehead face to the essential worker struggle, and that's why you have a Congress of Essential Workers, which is interesting to call a Congress, because that's the kind of language that old communist or socialist movements used. You have Dr. Cornel West, of course, he appears, and he's always kind of a guy to give yourself some radical clout. But he's his own man as well. And in fact, but he also kind of goes where not so much where the wind blows, but where the energy is. So like he came in 2016 to the Green Party convention, and he was kind of a guest speaker there. And then as soon as oh yes, and this was right after. So basically, he's speaking for Bernie for all the year, and then once he's out of the race, he then goes to the Green Party convention a month later, and the same thing kind of occurs. Although it did not happen again this cycle, he was again riding with Bernie, which doesn't rhyme, but whatever. But instead of switching to say supporting and basically like many progressives, instead of after Bernie switching to Green, so many basically went to this MPP, this People's Party. And that's where, whether they mean to or not, though they probably much mean to, it hamstrings the Green Party and what we represent, which is, as I put it, independent, or as Howie puts it, an independent leftist movement, an independent leftist party or platform or means of running for office that is not with the Democrats, not with the status quo. The People's Party kind of sells itself as not doing that. It's weird because they have people like Nina Turner basically being one of their figureheads, and she's going to run for Congress, but she's going to do it as a Dem. Eleanor Goldfield, activist, host of Act Out, creator of Art Killing Apathy. Alicius Garcia, host of the Anisla Show. Jimmy Dore, if you haven't heard of him. I have lots of thoughts on him. I'm not a hater. I'm not a hater of anybody, really. Hopefully I've given that across yet. I don't hate on anybody. But I do think people have bad takes. But this is mostly because of who they are and how they're raised and what they do. A lot of material stuff. I mean, with Jenny Dore, he's popular because he's as angry as we are, and I recognize that. I respect that. He's as angry as I am, and that's why I watched him for a bit because he was more angry than the rest of the Young Turks. But what's interesting is what first not drove me, attracted me to the Young Turks and listening to them and their takes during the Obama years was that they were as angry as I was at the Democrats. Justin Jackson, NFL running back. I don't know, maybe he was one of the few front runners for kneeling, not Kaepernick, but Caitlin Swiftley Belknap, national director of Move to Amend. This is a group that I have one of their buttons at the very least. Move to Amend is to amend the Constitution to overturn Citizens United. So it's basically creating a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, because that's kind of the root of all evil, or it's one of those big steps to reforming our political process if you believe it is not beyond saving. With how hard it is to amend the Constitution, and how impossible the forces of entrenchment and stasis make it, good luck with that. Again, to point out that some of these groups and campaigns, they've existed for over a decade now, and they have made very little um, kind of gains or momentum. But forming together into this elaborate, this beast, this we call it, this crazy beast, um, is maybe part of being like joining a coalition is part of gaining momentum. Maybe a girl, or maybe a girl, Silver Lake Councilwoman elected, first drag queen elected to public office in the U.S. That's for her. Medea Benjamin. Medea Benjamin was one of those interesting characters. Totally anti-imperialist, inspiring, good speaker, but not committed to any organization, except maybe until now. She was never committed to the Greens, even though it seemed like she would be a perfect spokesperson for us. And as far as like our jam, because we're the only peace party, but she would not be a Green or join the Greens or be at least outwardly, publicly one. And because, like so many others, and it's kind of why this People's Party exists, is because they want to keep their options open. They don't want to cut themselves off from the Dems, and that's kind of my first red flag. Is all the people who didn't want to, they just want to be progressives. They do not want to be leftists, because that turns too many people off from their message. As if the messages that they give don't turn the wrong, the people off. But who's the people here? Who are we talking about? Mike McCorkle, former chair of Progressive Democrats of Colorado. Red flag. Progressive Democrats, right? Is this about making a new party, or is this about just making a new left wing for the Dems? Of course, they say that explicitly that they're not trying to do that. More on that. But Representative Mike Sylvester, Maine state representative, who was endorsed by the DSA. Omar Fernandez, president of American Postal Workers Union. But that means he's in leadership. More on that. Dr. Pia Camus, climate scientist and author, and a Bernie surrogate. So a direct Bernie spokesperson. Ron Clone, who's kind of a pair for Jimmy Dore, though they are separate people. Rose McGowan, this Ryan Knight, host of the Amped Up podcast, and then Susan Sarandon, of course. Now, she was going to vote for Jill Stein, but she did not announce she was going to vote for Howie Hawkins. In fact, so many didn't. So many leftists left the Green Party out high and dry, and we really suffered for it because, hey, we do in fact need our own coalition of left-leaning people and progressives, and yet they all just left us high and dry. We're just a tool, an alternative to voting two parties when they feel it's safe to. But obviously, very few people considered themselves safe to do so. Voting Trump out was the prerogative. And it's all anything anarcho Bidenists like Fosh or many of the other leftists out there, whether they're on Twitch, YouTube, or what have you, could not shut up about. I understand why that is the main goal, but now that that's completed, guess what happens? All these leftists, all these left leaning people now are suddenly at each other's throats and arguing about now how to push for Medicaid for all or anything in the new Biden status quo, which, as far as I'm concerned, uh, the same as the Bush administration. I'm old enough to tell you, if you're younger, if you're younger than 21, that this is exactly like the Bush administration. Everything that liberals and leftists were whining about with the Bush administration is happening. It's stasis. None of it was reversed. That's kind of why I stopped being a Democrat after 2010. Because it was after 2 years in, after '08, because that was the thing. That was the promise. After Bush was reelected, it was like it's all about electing Democrats, getting Congress and the Senate back. And once we do that, then we can reverse the bad things that Bush did. Bring things, quote unquote, back to normal, the normal of the Clinton 90s. And they didn't do any of it. Right? In '08, it was a sweep, full control of the government, and a new shiny progressive president. It amounted to zilch. It was a lie, total lie. And they've just done this whole thing, a whole cycle of this over again. Now, Trump didn't get 2 terms like Bush did, but it's pretty much the same feelings being invoked of how terrible it is to have this Republican president, how what embarrassment he is. He's making us all look bad. He's making the country worse. All of the corporate cronies, all of the crime. The fact that Bush was, when first not elected. Anyway, more tangents. I really should just keep the focus on People's Party here, not on my own gripes about the left leaning and the last election. It's in the past, but nothing's truly gone. This is an interesting list to say the least. However, it's primarily academics and celebrities. Not to say those types of people don't have a place in breaking the duopoly. Yeah, there's no organizing prowess. Only one labor organizer and no tenant organizers are on the board. The only 2 people adjacent to labor organizer is Omar Fernandez, who is in union leadership as the president of Vermont's Postal Workers Union, and then Chris Smalls. This making Chris the only labor organizer on this board. As many activists and most labor organizers know, being in union leadership is not the same as being a union organizer. This board overall has several strong picks. However, the collective strength lies in celebrity and name recognition, with less emphasis on grassroots or people to people organizing. Most of the board are either somehow related to the Democratic Party or Bernie's campaigns. However, there is one pick who may stand to undermine what the MPP claims to stand for, or, in fact, is emblematic of what they stand for, Rose McGowan. I don't find it so terrible, though it is problematic for her to. I guess this is about Weinstein or something. But basically, she kind of naysayed Me Too, and then went full turf. Um, oh yeah, on she says like she's homophobic. Um, Perhaps or definitely her way of speaking about it is homophobic because she makes it about like gay white rich men are like all gay people, which of course they're not. So remember, homophobia, racism, one of those attributes of these isms, bigotry, is lumping people together into one group. So she talks about rich white men taking Molly, wearing, basically the right to have a pride parade. Though, of course, pride is so much more than that. And it's more for so much people who are, in fact, still suffering, not wealthy, not just coming out of the closet. And that's all they had to do. And they were secure to do so. Um, Saying that gays are as misogynistic as straight men. All gays? Or just the gay men you're interacting with? That kind of thing. And then she went full turf with, "You're a woman now? Well, fucking learn that we have had a very difficult experience than your life of male privilege." Because, trans privilege. It's so overwhelming. Furthermore, absent of bylaws, the MPP, and this is the important line for me. MPP is arguably not even a party yet. Whether or not you believe that a party can be a party without bylaws, which to me it isn't, the absence of bylaws and organized structure is causing daily chaos in their organizing slack. Because there's no cohesive plan strategy. They're still kind of working it out. Their little conference or their convention wasn't to lay down the bylaws, which takes almost years of work. It did for the Green Party, and they basically just kind of said, "Okay, we're a party now. We had all these celebrity speakers, and we have all of this support, at least in spirit. But that is not what makes a movement. It's not what makes a political party." Furthermore, moderators in the MPP Slack are frequently guilty of silencing questions and dissent by deleting entire threads of messages. Even further, when people ask for guidance, they tend to get radio silence. Rank and file members have expressed plenty of concerns, ranging from not wanting to be silenced to frustrations at lack of operating democracy. And here's some examples. Let's read these. I have to disagree about questioning of the organization being harmful to the organization. Just questioning. So I'm not going to subscribe completely ill intent on the mods or the leaders or whatever. It's really more incompetence, and that like you have to stamp down dissent or conflicts in order to keep anything together. And you only have to do that. You have to do that if you don't have any other kind of cohesive thing binding things together. You have to use force and coercion if you're not going to have ideas uniting people. Ideas over what is the end goal of the MPP? What is the strategy, electoral or otherwise, that we're going for? Certain political parties don't have to be electoral. They can just be organizing people in the streets and just say they're a party because they're a political organization. But the whole point of this is not even an organization yet with bylaws, rules, a structure. There's just nothing. It's just a group of activists. And that is technically how the Green Party started. Um, but we also now have co-chairs and committees and what we call them. Yeah, state committees, a national committee, and caucuses. Caucuses are important. In which caucuses are affinity groups. They're organizations within an organization. They can do their own thing. They can do their own fundraising. They don't have, they're not hampered. They have autonomy. So whenever anyone says like the Green Party is like got this top-down authoritarian or that we're undemocratic, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. This is undemocratic. You can't have democracy without any kind of rules or shared ideology, which there isn't. Let's see. Going on. People even asking for a separate space for criticism so they don't have to see dissent. So this is talking about this Jen person here from Springfield. I would like to see a designated complaints area so I don't have to be infected by other people's negativity. I'm not saying that issues shouldn't be heard out or dealt with, but not everyone needs to know about it. Shouldn't everybody know when there's a problem or when people are discussing issues? Isn't that what transparency is all about, right? Cordoning it off into a free speech zone almost, or as they put it, complaints area. Sort of like how they kind of envision government like technocracy, where you have a complaint box and everyone puts their complaints in anonymously, and then the technocrat or the bureaucrat or the leadership, they get to view them and they read them, and then they do things silently, and then maybe they'll announce like, hey, we fixed this because we got complaints. That's the thing. You want to hear about something, a problem, when it's being resolved, not as it's coming up. That's what's being expressed. Not cool with that. Here's one of the many messages expressing dissent that got deleted. Listening to Richard is fine, but so is listening to everyone else instead of ghosting and stonewalling, just an FYI. Still waiting for that name. Well, I don't hold anything against Cornel West and Jimmy Dore, the actual leaders of the party, which they are not. They're on the advisory board. So who's on the real board? Is there a real board, governing board? I would not want to exclude members that disagree with the direction of the party, as if there's an agreed on direction for the party, right? Even though I get what you're saying, especially marginalized people who raise some issues, I would be careful. Beyond that, the MPP has admitted, via former Twitter handle, that they seek to be a new Big Tent party, as even Dore says. That they want, but this is what Dore doesn't say. They want to court moderate Republicans. They don't want to be a party of the left. In other words, they want to be another capitalist party. That's a conclusion to draw. We already have two of those, and look where that's led America. So People's Party didn't include Greens because they're looking to appeal. This is Stephanie Volin. I'm guessing. I think that I've seen this before. This is a Green, basically pointing out what her conclusion. They're looking to appeal to Republicans. Thanks for answering our question as to why no Greens were included in the conversation, about forming this Big Tent party. Because obviously, if you're forming a Big Tent party, well, maybe the Greens could be absorbed into it. Maybe all the leftist socialist orgs could. But no, that wouldn't work. Because the whole point of this new party is to not be leftist. What the hell? And this is all we need to know. At least some of us, this is all we need to know. Hey, and this is their old Twitter handle here. MPP's goal is a little different from the Greens. A little different. We say we want to be a major new party, not just a leftist party. So this is a slap in the face saying we can never be a major party because we're only a leftist party. Because leftists have some kind of ceiling. Greens have a good platform, not like they have a platform, but I'm not sure it can appeal to red state voters. Now, here's where I might get angry, because see, they don't know shit. This is just a tweet, right? But it's emblematic, it's representative of the attitudes of the people who are really behind this idea, really behind it, and not thinking about the Greens at all. In fact, they write the Greens as a vehicle off, or a green left coalition, green red coalition. They say, well, they're not sure it can appeal, meaning we don't know if it can or not, but we're assuming it doesn't. Little do they know that when Greens run, and we can run anywhere, when we run on red counties, red districts, and we just put out our platform, now we're not running as socialists, mind you. So there's that. The branding is simply Green Party, anti-corporate. But here's an example, just an example. Congressional race here in New York. Our candidate got more Republicans to vote for him than Democrats. Think about that. When we really run like a kind of good campaign, we get all kinds of people to vote for us. We earn every vote. We earn them with conversations. And it's not just through the means of a political campaign or electoral campaign, is what I mean. When social researchers go out into red country, Trump country, to talk about immigration and single payer healthcare, they switch minds with a few visits. With simple deep canvassing, they get people on board for leftist policy. Now, sometimes there's the means of not phrasing it as leftist or socialist, but simply the best possible policy. Steen Greenfield, who's the candidate I'm referring to, kind of does a balancing act of both saying that these are the best ideas on the first visit, and then later on, or in general statements, sweepingly post-capitalist, asterisk socialism for the win. Or these are socialist policies, but they're also the best policies. but just reverse that. These are the best policies, and they happen to be leftist. But these progressives are so, what's the opposite of confidence? They are not confident in leftist messaging. They're not confident in leftist policy. If they were, they wouldn't be afraid to be a leftist party or in a leftist party. And that's why I have very little patience. It's more disappointment, of course. Disappointment first. Too much. Leftists who just are they're ashamed, and it's definitely not a personal problem. Right? Our country, our education system makes us all ashamed to be leftists, ashamed to be socialists. And there are these progressives, throngs of them, throngs, millions, that have internalized this oppression. And they're ashamed to be leftists. They're ashamed to be part of a leftist group because once upon a time, to be that was to be criminalized. And that could be again. And many still act as if it is still is criminalized, though it technically isn't anymore. But it doesn't have to be criminalized because everyone's internalized that it's wrong and that the rest of America does not care for leftist ideas. They don't care for a leftist party. And they just look at, say, our returns, despite all of the reasons why we're shut out of debates and elections and denied ballot status and sued into oblivion, which is also a point made. Just wait for my roommate. Okay. I even twittered them asking about their seemingly incoherent strategy. Great. Felon for some elected office in 2022. Love it. Y'all understand that pushing to start with for a People's Party, while intriguing and stuff, is more damaging to process in general than joining the Greens, which already has ballot access in, 20 states at least, matching funds and so on, making for an idea, right? To be clear, I understand the passion, and I'm not critical of the organizers themselves, just the strategy, the ideas, not the people. I've just been in their meetings and whatnot. It's a passionate group. It just doesn't make any strategic sense. If For a People's Party wants to shed some light, I'll welcome their feedback. And here's another version of the other tweet. While the Green Party seeks to be just another left party, we're as effective and as powerful as the Communist Party of America or the Party for Socialist Liberation. We're just another left party. We want to be a major new party. They keep saying it. It's PR. It's bullshit. We're progressive populists. We want to use the Bernie strategy of appealing to the left, independents, and moderate Republicans, so they use the word themselves. We can pull away from the far right. That's essentially what Vosh does. Essentially, what a lot of lefties are doing. And my bag, my modus operandi is that we keep doing this shit, and we never build a left for itself that is itself. It's proud to be left because you're already, well, this writer puts it himself, the word progressive has never been more popular, and even the most corrupt faces of the establishment have claimed it, including people like Nancy Pelosi. Now, whenever the establishment types start using your language, it's time to get new language. Unprincipled populism is dangerous. Left populism can lead to social democracies like Europe and Nordic countries, as well as other lefter projects of building actual socialism. Right populism is generally fascism. Populism isn't set in as left, runs the risk of dragging people and organizations to the right. Appeal to these moderate Republicans, you're already compromising. And by compromising, I mean like diluting not only the message, but the policies, what you're willing to do, the kind of militancy, kind of organizing. You just actually stop talking to the poor because there's no poor independents. There's no poor moderate Republicans. Where's the organizing for the poor? Where's the organizing for workers? Well, independents are workers. Independents can and do vote green, but they also come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes independents are literally just really partisan, Dems or Republicans, and it's like Nader. Actually, it's not. I mean, it's not all one thing, but Nader never became a green. He was tied to being an independent because he, like many Americans, have this ideological conceit that it's so much more important to not be a joiner, and that somehow makes you stronger. Never seen that. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi is one of the most corrupt people in the world. And there's some, Pelosi bashing. You get it. Here's one member of the volunteer Slack who posted this exact message at least 20 times, and it kept getting deleted. But the admin of the party in quotes, because it's not a real party, eventually left it up. And it's this long diatribe, which basically kind of appears whenever, you soapbox or grandstand, and it comes from basically being ignored for a good amount of time. Or maybe you're not ignored, and people are willing to listen to you, but you don't have any actual democratic process. So you're really unsure if you're going to be heard or not. So you just kind of have to yell regardless. This occurs in any kind of social relationship where it's like if you don't have honest communication and it's really inconsistent of whether or not you're going to be heard or anyone's listening, you just kind of have to get it all out at once. You have to write, these essays. Well, let's read some of this until I get bored. The whole discussion surrounding Laura Morris arguing that there should be no questioning of authority in MPP. No questioning of authority? But what's the authority in the MPP? Is there even one? Is it just the mods? Was and is of all important one. So whoever decided to delete that commentary, including from black women like myself and at Bree, goes to show that this environment is growing more and more like the Democratic and Republican parties. Censorship should be a topic also discussed on Slack by volunteers because for an organization that is supposed to be of, by, and for the people, it is telling that this org is against speech freedom. It's one thing to regulate speech when it affects safety, blah, 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 but it's anti American, let alone organizationally counterproductive and counterintuitive. If we have diversity in experiences, voices, views, knowledge levels, this should be a space where we can learn from each other. Now, this kind of speaks to the kind of divisions that occur in orgs where you have professionalization, you have, where authority comes from is being a professional, not an expert's the wrong word, but by being an experienced organizer. You get experience by getting in somewhere. And that's how you make good candidate material. I don't make good candidate material because I've not held public office. And it's that whole 2 years experience to get an entry level position paradox. Usually it comes down to some form of nepotism, and some meritocracy based paces. It's following the pipeline of poli-sci major to intern to working for, and then you're hired by office people. By office people, I mean, then you leverage that to run for office yourself. There are many more screenshots out there, including several of my own that I could have used, but however, main readability, brevity, too late for that, at least for my case, this will have to suffice. The MPP strategy is to have local organizers set up state hubs.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.
Oh, shit. Why are you using two different adblock plugins? That's not a bad question.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.
Oh, great. I'm gonna keep hearing that. I have new follows. Wonderful. Stop attacking white males. Thank you, I guess, but I don't consider myself white. I'm ethnically Jewish. Why don't I like Vosh? I do like Vosh. I just have problems with him. That's not the same thing. Thank you, SS Jake Brent Pascal. What's the SS for, please? You know I'm Jewish, right? I haven't said that yet. I'm Jewish. Um, but anyway, tag names aside, why don't I like Josh Fine, Bosch Fine. I'm gonna see if I will discuss him in a bit. Yeah, I'm almost done with this. SSJ, okay, wonderful, wonderful to meet you. Um, no, I like Josh plenty. I just have problems with him, anarcho Bidenism and stuff like that. It's a long conversation, and let me just finish this, if you please. Um, So MMP strategy is to have local organizers set up state hubs, file for statewide People's Party. This is kind of how the Green Party started. Once the party was officially recognized by a relevant state, they link their efforts to the national organization, which happens to be a PAC. Happens to be a PAC. Um, oh, thank you. You're not the first person to tell me that, actually. I have a nice voice. But it's also practice. I've been doing radio for 3 years. So practice makes not perfect, but better. Also, before that, I ran for office. So I canvassed a lot. I did some public speaking. I'm not a lover of public speaking like Vosh is, because he actually said in that long interview by moderates that like his first passion is public speaking. So he is really good, and he's really confident, good selling it. I'm more of I just want to be a good communicator because I care about the cause. And yeah. And I don't want to put other types of leftisms down. But in this case, when it comes to progressives, progressive is not the same as leftist to me, because too many progressives stab uh, leftist organizing in the back. You know, they basically say, if you guys do too much, you make us look bad, and the Dems won't talk to us anymore, or something. It's a little like it's more complicated than that, but it's super petty. Um, So anyway, this is where where it's a pack and it's just encouraging grassroots people to kind of do this unpaid work to set up parties. It makes me feel like it's an MLM, multi-level marketing scheme. In summary, the MPP's claim to fame is celebrity, not organizing. Other parties, like the Greens, actually focus on the persistent fight to break the duopoly through organizing, petitioning, things like candidates and ballot access. Here's an example. We've elected over 1,000 people while dealing with ballot access policy discrepancies like this. If you were a corporate free party, volunteer run party who had damn near 2 million signatures to make the ballot in 50 states, your state party's sued into dust, you'd understand. These are all things that have happened to us. The visual 3-inch stack on this side is how many petitions a duopoly candidate has to collect. This is how many the Green Party has to collect. All right, and that's as an actual ballot party. Or rather, because we're not a ballot party, because getting the ballot in Illinois is impossible. And that's it for that. There's so many more things that say the system does to keep the Green Party down. And all of those things can also be done to the People's Party. But that's all kind of ignored on how they're going to, when asked, like, how are you going to, basically do better than the Green Party, they basically say, oh, we're going to be broader than the Green Party. Greens can only see there's this it's a myth that we're only appealing to left wingers. We actually don't. We actually have many liberals in the party too, sometimes to our detriment, because we argue about whether or not we're a full leftist party or not. But we do. At least we accept that we are. At least very much post capitalist, because hey, a lot of right wingers also